Hello. Hi, Marcus. Welcome to today's episode. I really appreciate you joining today. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Sean. It's good to see you too. And we're, I don't know, 16 hours apart, but it's been a while, but you always look the exact same.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. I think being around younger people and people that are happy and engaged in something they're passionate about, I think that keeps you young. So hopefully I can keep going that way.
Perfect, perfect.
I just wanted to basically kick things off with a little bit of intro so everybody on the audience knows kind of who you are. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe like 2 minutes. Who's Marcus Torres?
Yeah, sure. So I would say first and foremost, I'm a girl dad. I have two girls, and loves my life. Chloe and Mia, and they're the best, but they're pre-teen, so tons of fun and learnings for me because I grew up with four brothers and no sisters. So an interesting time in my life. Besides that, I'm just curious. I'm an innovator. I've worked for and worked in tech for quite a while. Wasn't exactly the career I ever thought I was going to be in. Before I had an internship at IBM too many years ago to even count, because people that are watching this are going to do the math and figure out how old I really am. Um,
Was it a
yeah,
green screen at the time? Just asking
I,
that.
no, there was no cell, or I guess there were cell phones, but there was definitely pagers. And yeah, but before I did an internship at IBM, I was working at a water park, and so we could just a completely different career path. Obviously, I didn't think that was a career, but tech just wasn't something that was in my community. I didn't know anybody in tech, and I just happened to land there. So it's been a great ride, and uh, yeah, and that's kind of me in a nutshell. A dad, an innovator, a curious person, and generally somebody who will always try something at least three times before I decide I'm not going to do it again, for better or worse. So
Oh, excellent. And you're based out of California, so I'm obviously in Melbourne, Australia at the moment. As you said, we're 16 hours, I think it is. You said,
hmm.
but are you in the northern California area?
Yeah, for those who know the Bay Area, born and raised, which is hard to find us natives, but have been all over, as you know, both from a travel perspective and a kind of lived at different places. So this is home. It tends to be not only where different opportunities that align with what I want to do are, but obviously my friends and family. So.
Oh, excellent. Well, turning to the kind of work career, you've really had a really impressive career. I know you've worked at a lot of the leading tech companies, and I think in that area where you're living is, there's a lot of innovation there. So from the early days of like the dot-com boom, and then there was the bust in the late '90s and early 2000s, and going back many years, we had actually met during that time. I was living in San Francisco. Our company, your company, was a customer of our company, which was interesting. And you've had a lot of like leading tech roles. So you went to the largest brands, Salesforce and Twilio and ServiceNow, and now you've moved over to another role at BetterUp. And I was going to start the first question with really reflecting on that journey you've gone through, and you've had these kind of broad, diverse experiences across all of these prominent companies. How has that kind of shaped your approach as you've worked your way up into leadership positions?
One thing I would say is that I've always been obsessed with the customer. Back when we knew each other, and your company was, or my company was a customer of your company. My role was really to partner with the product manager on my side, where I was, an engineering and kind of engineering lead, and working with your company actually at the time and the developers there to build what the product was we wanted for our customer. And whether it's back when I was an engineer to when I was a consultant, I always had this keen focus of, if take care of the customer and they'll take care of you. It was quite easy from that perspective. Um, and over time, that role really shifted. So whether I was leading a specific implementation or I was writing code, or eventually, deciding on a strategy on what does address the customer's need. It's always that keen focus on the customer. And I think in a world where you're really pushed to constantly grow revenues, when you're constantly pushed to introduce new products, especially for a bunch of innovators that are out there, a lot of that comes organically. I see a problem, I address a problem. But as you grow, how do you stay close to the customer? And how do you always deliver value to the customer? And when I think of innovation, when I think of leadership and trying to inspire, teams, whether that's a team of 10 or a team of 50 or a team of 100, what they really want to hear that's inspiring for them is how we're ultimately taking care of our customer, and not simply, trying to monetize, but delivering value. And on the flip side of that, both as a customer and ultimately as a GM who's run, two multi 9-figure businesses, I will tell you, customers will pay for value. They even if you get them to pay for monetization, at some point that runs out, but they will always pay for value. And so that's been a core cornerstone of how I lead and how I innovate, is just, take care of the customer and they'll take care of you.
It's a very timely message. I was actually, right before our call, having a conversation with one of our consultants exactly around this. I said the focus always has to be on the value you're giving to the customer, understanding, what are the things that are driving them, what's important to them. Like if you can make one difference that's a non-monetary difference to their life, whether it's making it, easier to do something, or, it could be something work related to increase revenue for them. That's got to always be the focus, right? Because if you're not focused on value, then you're just, what do you do? What are you doing exactly?
Exactly.
So like, since you've been through working throughout your entire career, you've been working with the largest brands, and you've now moved to a company that's also well known, but it is smaller than some of the other larger brands that you've worked for. Can you kind of give us a sense on why you made that transition?
At the end of the day, the thing that drives me is impact. So if I believe I can come into an organization and deliver impact through some of my experiences, through some of my leadership, that just excites me, because you're constantly helping to not only problem solve for the issues we have today, but really scale for the challenges of tomorrow. And to be totally honest, Sean, it's also a little bit of a bet on myself, right? There's BetterUp's an amazing company. They have a great purpose, which is really around human transformation. And if you look at what, my entire career, for the most part, working for enterprise software, the value we were really delivering is, I'm going to give you a system of record. That system of record is going to drive certain efficiencies in process and sort of employee productivity. But the true sort of unlock of exponential value, and I believe this, is not simply the technology or digital transformation, but human transformation. And I would say I'm a byproduct of that, right? There's different points in my career where I believe I learned hard lessons, and that transformation that happens ultimately made me the professional I am. And if we can unlock that at greater scale for organizations around the world, that's a very exciting thing to do. And that bet was bet on a company with a purpose I'm aligned to, a company that's successful and growing, and a bet on myself that I can provide the level of impact that's going to allow them to be one of those amazing public companies that we look up to for years to come.
Oh, and what's interesting is I'm going through a very similar thing myself. So I'm now consulting to much smaller organizations than I had in the past. So I too was at Salesforce at one point as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, coming from something that's, 70, 80,000 people, and then you're a part of a much larger team with lots of resources, and, just very difficult sometimes to even navigate the organization, to a much smaller organization where you're helping customers or clients where you know them by name, you know who their family members are, you know exactly like what they are trying to accomplish. I think There's something really nice about building that personal relationship and building the trust at that really human to human level. I think no matter whether you're in a small business or a business that's much larger, we always, as you said, we have to remember who the customer is and what value you're always bringing. So it's not just the tech and technology, right? It's also the people part of it and the process as well. You'll hear that people, process, and tech a lot.
I think the trick to scaling is having a predictable, repeatable pattern for sure. That is, but that doesn't just get accomplished through process. There's a number of different ways to do that. The great thing about seeing different companies of different sizes is perspective. And guess what? The process that I knew at Fortune 100 companies or isn't the same process that's going to work for a smaller company. Obviously not for a startup, but for say a mid-market or commercial company. But those perspectives allow you to create the right culture and the right environment and the right empowerment and the right products. And yes, the right process that's going to work to help you scale to the next level.
So in tech, you've obviously led some product teams. So going back and looking at this experience, what makes a successful product? If you're launching something new to the market, and think about the people that might be listening to this, and they're thinking about what are the services, what's the value that I'm going to bring to my customer that I think is potentially going to like this, but this has never been tested before. So what are the kind of things they should be thinking about?
I think one of the key areas to focus is what is the outcome and just not the pain point, right? A lot of times we'll be doing something whether it's personally or professionally, and we'll say, this sucks. I may create a product or I may create a company or I'm going to do my startup to address this specific problem. And the one thing that I would say is, one, there's incredible success stories of companies who see a problem, solve that problem, and scale.
Hmm.
But the way to really, that I find that to look at it in a more comprehensive view is what is the outcome that person is really trying to achieve? And based on the outcome that that person's trying to achieve and the problems, not just a problem, but the problems they're having in achieving that, you can create more of an end-to-end solution. Even if that's not where you start, you're not going to do the whole thing, right out of the
Day
gates and
one, right? Yeah.
kind of like your MVP. But you can really identify all of the problems in the broader outcome and then prioritize those accordingly and then start to go after that. And what you'll see is when you start to do that, not only did you solve for the most important problem because you prioritize it and you identify the number of problems in the broader outcome, but it gives you more longevity in the sense of your solution is going to be more robust over time, which helps you deal with competition and other things that kind of come up as you continue to grow.
I always thinking about it as a first step is obviously building trust, right? Getting to know the customer, understanding them deeply, being, the word customer intimate, right? Like just really truly understanding who they are as people, what's driving them, and then thinking about, how do you add value to them? Maybe it is addressing an immediate pain point, but what you're trying to develop, like what I've seen is like you're building this long-term relationship, not just selling them something and then you have nothing else to talk to them about, but it's building that long-term partnership, that long-term relationship where you're adding value all the time, and they see you as a trusted advisor or a trusted partner that's always thinking about you, like how can I better help this person, or how can we join up and collaborate, how do we make things better together? And I think as you start to build out those different offerings, in your stack, or if it's tech, in your stack, or if it's in some other non-technical business, then you start to give them a bit of a success roadmap, I guess, like to get to that outcome you're talking about.
One of the best CEOs I've ever worked for is Bill McDermott at ServiceNow. And he says trust is the ultimate human currency. You gain it in drops and you lose it in buckets. And that is 100% true, not just with customers, but in life. And you're absolutely right. If you want to identify what they're really trying to do and the problems, you have to build trust. And couldn't agree with you more, Sean.
Right. So like for those companies, like, there's been a lot of change that's happening right now in techs, especially because of AI. And I think as well as the lingering effects of the pandemic, as well as just societal changes that, mental health and well-being are starting to be raised more. When I grew up, it wasn't something that was really talked about a lot. And I know you've gone to a company now that's focused on that area and helping organizations. So how do you see the role of health kind of evolving in leadership, of mental health evolving in leadership, especially as we're continuing to face changes in society like remote work and the pressures of having to deal with new technology like AI and this kind of fast paced change?
Yeah, I don't think any of us, myself included, are really prepared for the amount of change that AI is going to bring. Um, if you think about it, it's probably been about 2 years, something like that, since
Feels like
open.
25 years, like it's just so
It just,
fast.
yeah, but OpenAI really kind of came on the scene a couple of years ago, and the amount of absolute just innovation in improvements within AI in general, Chat GPT and 4.0 versus 4 was, mon- like monumental. I just think it's going to be changing really quickly. And the one true, like, persistent thing about life is change. Like, life is always changing. And it's interesting because humans are very adverse to change. Like our fir-
Yeah.
our first reaction is like, nope, don't like it, don't like it.
Well,
Not
there's this idea of the survival brain, right? Like people are
That's
just
right.
like the survival brain's like, I don't want change, just leave me alone. Like I'm happy where I am. But that's
I
not reality, right?
Yeah,
Things
I've
change all
done
the
this
time.
this way for 10, 15 years, but the one consistent thing in life is change. And I think the amount of change, and I think about this all the time, to be totally honest, a lot of jobs I think it's going to be interesting to see how jobs transform over the next, I don't think it's the next 2 years. I think it's more like the next 10 years.
Mm.
AI is going to drive fundamental change, not only in how we work, but how we behave, how we interact with technology. And that'll be a very interesting evolution in, our lives, and especially, if we have kids, our kids' lives. And I can imagine, I'm kind of thinking of my parents. Both my parents are in their 80s.
Extrapolating out like what
Yeah.
it might look like.
And they're like, back then, like, whatever, a TV and, like, a telephone was a big deal. And now, they're still around, thank God. And they have the internet and they have all the smartphones and all the things. The amount of, like, unbelievable technology change during that relatively small, like, blink of an eye from a timeline perspective. Now imagine that accelerated 5x, 10x with AI. And so I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how things evolve and how we have to evolve to go with it. And what I would say is, if you resist it, like, resistance is futile. Like, it's not going to work out. And be curious, be a tinkerer. Like, go and start to just play around with some of these with your own interests, and ultimately within some of your own functions. And so, there's things I know from 20 plus years of product experience, and I'll go to Chat GPT and I'm like, hey, give me an outline for XYZ, because it just writes it, it outlines it in as sort of like a boilerplate that I can work off of. And then I have to go in there and editorialize and kind of curate it, but it's a time saver. And if you look at one thing that has been literally the fundamental truth of businesses since the Industrial Revolution, if not forever, is how do you drive more productivity, from technology, from machines, and from people. And if you don't embrace it, I think you'll be in trouble.
My take on it is to be successful in something, you've got to focus. And I think there's so much cognitive like a load that you can manage in a day. There's only so much, your mind, your energy, you have to manage and the focus, right? So just using some of the tools, I think I find that things that I know I could do myself, I would take time. it's almost having like a person on the side. You could just ask, well, what do you think about this? And get that quick draft or that quick outline, which has reduced you having to think through in excruciating detail with a blank piece of paper. And I think that's the most helpful. It's like a jump start in a car. It gets you going a little bit, but it's not going to drive the car for you. You still have to have critical thinking skills. You still have to have that humanity that you bring to it to basically tailor the responses or know what questions to ask it to get the best responses.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, for certain jobs and for certain functions, that worker is 24 hours and they don't sleep and they don't get fed and they don't take breaks and they don't do all those things. And they become more consistent over time because they train themselves without bias or emotion. Right. So I think it's something we need to embrace. At the same time, I believe there's going to be amazing innovation, just like any technology entrance in human history. We learn how to power that technology and innovate even more and create amazing companies and technologies and economies based on that.
I've been focused a lot recently on looking at how AI is impacting marketing, and I know from your perspective, you focus more on the more areas like platform development, product development, and the enterprise solutions, and now a bit more on the human side. So, how do you see AI kind of shaping the area that you're in? I think you've mentioned a few things on there how you use it, but in terms of the kind of the business area you're working in, right, in terms of developing platforms or products, are you seeing that impacting the way that, say, product marketers work or product managers work or people developing
Yeah,
products?
honestly, I see it in every single function. So I'm an advisor of an amazing AI company called Voxity.ai, which its entire job is to create digital employees, actually. So like AI employees.
Like AI
Um,
agents, basically, that just
yeah,
perform
AI
specific
agents,
tasks?
but
Or,
focused on specific functions within an organization. And I was at a conference, like an AI conference. It's really a startup conference, but everything was AI for the most part. Um, there wasn't a single function in the enterprise when you walked around that didn't have a startup there trying to replace it with AI.
hmm.
What I would, what I would kind of say is that these agents, they can't replace a human being today, but they can augment it. Right. And when we think of those technologies and how to just be more productive and to help, a lot of these things you have to sort of take the output, take it somewhere else, sometimes to another AI tool, process it there. And anyone from any of the large LLMs are watching this, your image generation doesn't work. Like I've tried all the prompts. I've said, reduce this flat icon image from 3 towers to 1 tower. And no LLM today can figure that out,
It's
which is
not quite there yet.
so,
Yeah, I've had the same
so
experience. Yeah.
but but I think in every aspect of our jobs, it's changing, and I think we really need to think about how we orchestrate that to be successful with both humans in the loop and humans out of the loop.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Some of the stuff that can be standardized will be, it'll be automated for sure. But other things, I think over time there needs to be improvements for, where you're starting to remove humans. And yeah, there's definitely going to be an impact on work and roles and all. Now, just switching to a different topic here is, I know you had mentioned early on when we were talking about your background that you said you grew up in an area where you said there wasn't like tech in that area, but you grew up in the Bay Area. So, right, is that right? You grew up in the Bay
yeah,
Area, or you grew up somewhere else?
yeah. I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in East San Jose. That nobody in my community, not my family, not my family's friends, were tech workers. I'd say it was either blue collar work or they were teachers. My first computer was an Apple IIe, and that's not when it was new. This is when like the school was like, we're going to throw it away, and my mom brought it home, and so I just other people had bigger, more useful
More advanced
computers,
computers, yeah.
more advanced computers. So it just wasn't sort of in my repertoire. I thought I was going to go to school. Maybe I would just be in business. I didn't know what that meant, right? But I was fortunate enough to see a flyer on my high school wall, and it was an organization called Inroads, which is an amazing organization that is intent on placing, minority and at-risk youth into corporate America. And I applied. I interviewed at IBM. I was able to get an internship, and IBM was a great company that allowed me to maintain that while I was all the way through college, which was very helpful to me because I was able to pay for college, and earn, honestly, I think it was something like $14 an hour. But at the time where my friends were making like $5 an hour or something, was like fundamentally different. And ultimately, it introduced me to an entire new world, and a world of professionals, a world of technology, and a community I wouldn't have known otherwise. So it's been great.
And you're doing a lot of work now, and you've been recognized by a few organizations. So one was the Hispanic IT Executive Council, HITECH,
Hmm.
for your leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about working with the nonprofit sector and some of the things that you do in that area?
Yeah, I ultimately, it doesn't matter if an organization that you align yourself with is about a specific background, in this case, like a racial background that I identify with, or some other alignment that you have with that organization. Ultimately, one of the things when you grow in your career that no one quite tells you is like leadership is lonely. It's lonely. And you know, I remember I had a manager who I really felt like from day one, or from the interview, we just really, really gelled. But as we both grew in the organization we were part of, I would feel more and more isolated from this person who I felt we were riffing every day on what's the right strategy, what's the right go to market approach, what's the right pricing and packaging, what's the right product, what's the right design. And everything felt very connected and collaborative. But as you grow and you take on more responsibility, your job and your function gets more and more lonely. And because you're seen as, a leader, in some cases, like the leader for an entire business, is like in a GM role, um, everyone's kind of is looking for you to really provide not just vision and insight, but decisions, sometimes too many decisions, where they're asking you to kind of, play dad or mom and break the tie. It's a lonely place. And I think when it comes to organizations like High Tech, what they really do is they bring a community together. And I think that's something where you can not only feel like you're around people that have had similar experiences, but the biggest thing is you can learn from them.
Hmm.
And being able to, really engage and interact with peers and say, I'm going through this thing and I'm trying to figure it out. And within your own organization as a leader, you don't always feel like you can say those things. You can't be as open because, hey, you're the executive, or you're the boss. So you're struggling in some cases to get the help you need because you're fighting the perception that all things are good, right? Or like
You have all the answers as a
you
leader, and everything is looking great, and everybody has to believe in you and where it's heading. But sometimes it's a lonely place to be, right?
That's right. And I think communities like that, I'm very humbled to be part of that community. I love my mentor from that community. And it's something that I think we all need, which is support. And that doesn't change with titles. It really, it's just kind of the problems you have to deal with.
Yeah. No, that's great. So we're getting close to the end of time here. I'll just give you a chance to we'll wrap up here with maybe a bit of advice that you can pass on to the audience that might be interested in leadership or innovation or even working in tech. What's the one kind of takeaway you would leave with them?
I would honestly tell them, Sean, the same thing I tell my girls. If I call them in, they could probably recite it. And I tell them that the secret to success is 4 C's. right? And those C's are, you have to have commitment and be, when you make a commitment, you live up to that commitment. And whether that's you're playing a sport or it's your professional career, if you say you're going to do that job, the best way to build trust, the best way to create a reputation where you're somebody you can count on is that you live up to that commitment. And it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. It just means your heart is in it, your hustle is in it, and you have to stay committed. The second C is confidence. For so many years, I was like, do I know this? I don't know people like me in my like friend circle. All of my friends from San Jose generally did blue collar work for a long time. Not everybody, but kind of a majority stake. Who am I? Where did I come from? All those kind of things. But confidence is key. Arrogance never works, but having confidence is key, and it's confidence that you can learn. And the one thing I believe is in human potential, and everyone can learn. So confidence is the second one. The third is community. In every single step of my career, there was a community that rallied behind me, that supported me, that when I left the company, they were the community that I bonded with and said goodbye to. And I really believe you need a community to be successful ultimately, because nobody can truly be successful and do everything on their own. And it's that community that's going to support you and help you and coach you when you need it. And then the last is communication. If there's one thing, I don't care if you're early in career, I don't care if you're an executive, I would say the most determining factor I see is people's ability to communicate. And if you are, say, in sort of that midlife of your career and you're finding that you're hitting a ceiling, the very first thing I would tell you is look at how you communicate. Are you doing it concisely? Are you aligning to the audience that you're talking to? And if you're not doing those things, you're not showing people that you can really be that next level, because the first half of your career is usually what you do that helps you be successful. And then the second half of your career, and especially what I would say the executive side, is how you do it. And there's no other barometer that other executives use more than how you communicate effectively.
Well, that's great advice. The 4 C's. So we'll remember once again, it's
It's commitment, confidence, community, and communication.
great. Well, thank you, Marcus. That's a great. I think we'll leave with that. That's a good takeaway. I want to thank you for spending the time with me today, and wish you all the best. And hope to see you in California soon.
Sounds good, Sean, and hope to see you in Australia. So,
Take care. Thank you.
cheers.